Today on Notsam Wrestling, Cody Rhodes wins the WWE Championship, and it's time to have a non-feelings, analytical conversation about it. Did CM Punk and Roman Reigns go too far? Danhausen is a full week in. Penta is the Intercontinental Champion, and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And we've been talking about this, and I feel like we're back into emergency podcast season. Dropped an emergency podcast late night on Friday night after Cody Rhodes won the WWE Championship. Of course, we dropped additional podcasts centered around Roman Reigns and CM Punk, centered around the speculation of whether or not Cody Rhodes would win the WWE Championship from Drew McIntyre. That's why you got to be subscribed to the YouTube channel as well as the audio podcast feed, so you can get everything that drops exactly when it drops, because as this road to WrestleMania gets built and built and built right in front of our eyes, we will have so much to talk about, and I will be there with you across every step of the way. This is not one of those roads that's a long highway stretch where it's going to be 20, 30 miles before the next rest stop. No. You got a nice fast food stop every 3/4 of a mile, and I'm the one who's serving up the burgers. Last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts, okay? We'll go to Cody Rhodes right now. We'll go to Cody Rhodes as the WWE Champion. Cody Rhodes goes to SmackDown and wins the title. Of course, there was all kinds of things going on around it. We start the show with Randy Orton, and he's talking about the fact that, well, he's been to this, what has he been to, 20 WrestleManias? I think he said this will be his 21st, maybe, WrestleMania, which is exactly half of all WrestleManias that have ever existed. I mean, that's a pretty solid streak in and of itself. But Randy Orton, who I guess 42, I think he said will be his 21st WrestleMania. He's only main evented twice, I think, so this will be his third main event against, at that point, he didn't know who. RKO's Trick Williams on the way out, and just kind of says hello to the audience. And I will tell you, there's not a sniff of Randy Orton turning heel here. In fact, when Randy Orton brought up the fact that he hasn't had a lot of WrestleMania main events, and the fact that this is his opportunity to get number 15, everybody was cheering for Randy Orton. I don't see a scenario where people going into WrestleMania and at WrestleMania in Las Vegas are not cheering for Randy Orton. It's just, as a wrestling fan, especially as somebody that's been watching Randy Orton across his 21 WrestleManias, but even if you haven't, even if you're just interacting with Randy right now for, you've seen him once or twice at WrestleMania, just this version of Randy Orton is so magnetic. It's so authentic, and it connects so much that I just don't see how you don't root for this guy. He even had a conversation with Sami Zayn backstage before the Drew McIntyre Cody Rhodes match, where Sami Zayn asked him philosophically, can you be a good person and still be selfish? Randy told Sami, sometimes you have to be selfish. That's kind of the secret here. And Sami Zayn said, well, could you still consider yourself a good person? And Randy said, well, I would consider myself a 14-time world champion. And kind of smiled and walked away with that. This is a job. This ain't show, friends. It's show business, kid. And Sami Zayn was given food for thought there. I think we are seeing the slow progression into what will be a Sami Zayn heel turn. But who knows? When Sami turns heel, it'll be very interesting to see if he gets the audience to boo him or they kind of go with him. I wouldn't be shocked if the audience wants the more aggressive Sami Zayn. But I'm also very curious as to what that context will be, because we get to Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre tried to get out of it. Nick Aldis said, nope, you have to defend the title or you're going to get stripped of the title. So it's happening. Referee decided not to call nary a disqualification. It wasn't advertised as a street fight or a no DQ match, but more, there's got to be a winner here. So table spots, referee bumps, be damned. Drew ain't getting disqualified, and neither is Cody. You mean it's no disqualification? Well, we didn't say all that. We're just not doing it. We got to get to a result here. So you go, okay, all right. So this is the real deal then. And Cody Rhodes on SmackDown wins the WWE Championship. Cody Rhodes goes to WrestleMania, and it's Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton in what is, I would consider what is being called the other main event of WrestleMania. Ever since WrestleMania, I guess 36 was the first time they went 2 nights. And ever since then, it's been considered 2 main events per WrestleMania. And that's not a double main event scenario where you really just lean towards the last match. You know, I think when you start calculating now how many main events people have had, if it's advertised as a double main event, like WrestleMania 8 was advertised as a double main event. Hogan versus Sid, Macho versus Flair. But the main event is the last match. WrestleMania 18, Rock versus Hogan was on it, but they don't get credit for that as a main event because it didn't go on last. However, with WrestleMania being 2 nights, it's 2 shows, 2 different tickets. You could go to one, you're not going to the other. You have to buy 2 tickets to see both shows. So you get credit for having 2 main events on those shows. And of course, that has changed the sort of conversation as to how many main events people are getting, because not only could you conceivably get 2 main events at a WrestleMania, but you also now have twice as many opportunities. Like, people go like, well, John Cena, you know, what did John Cena really main event? He main evented most of the WrestleManias he was on. He didn't main event. He main evented the 2 with Rock. He main evented, I think, with Triple H and Shawn. So he's probably got like 4 main events maybe out of all his WrestleMania appearances. But I would imagine if WrestleMania had been 2 nights during peak John Cena, he probably would have main evented most of those. You know, like that WrestleMania 24. I mean, unless you decided to main event one night with Shawn and Flair and the next night with Taker and Edge. But there are multiple WrestleManias that John Cena didn't main event that if you split them into 2 nights, you would think that would probably have been a John Cena main event. But regardless, you didn't, so you won't. So it's all hypothetical. But Cody and Randy, I would think, is the main event. I'm not going to speculate on adding anybody to this match. A graphic has come out, and it wasn't even a breaking news graphic. We've got the match graphic. And frankly, regardless of how anybody feels about whether or not Drew McIntyre is champion, or whether you wanted Drew McIntyre to be champion, or whether you wanted a new guy to be in the match, or what, regardless, I don't know that there's a bigger match involving Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton than Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. I think for either of those 2 people right now, I mean, you might be able, I don't know, if you had Cody and Roman and Cody and Punk, could that be? I mean, you could argue, I suppose. But I don't think there's a bigger match for Randy. And without Roman and Punk, I don't think there's a bigger match for Cody either. And I don't think adding anybody to this match makes it a bigger match. And I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that this is the story that we're going to see. Now, it could, because you still don't, and nothing's been official as to what's going to happen. You got Jacob Fatu, you got Drew McIntyre, you have Sami Zayn, all kind of within this orbit. And so, you know, sure, a million things could happen. But as of right now, we're going to live in the world where it's Randy versus Cody. Here's what I'm thinking. Randy versus Cody is main eventing night 1, and Punk versus Roman is main eventing night 2. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to think. I think that's probably where most of us are at. So let's meet where most of us are at. There are a lot of feelings that came down when Cody Rhodes beat Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship, and I get it. We'd been waiting for a long time to see Drew McIntyre as champion, and quite frankly, he was a great champion. He was a great heel champion. I went on this podcast and I told you that I said there's a good chance, and I think we all agreed, that when he won the championship on the 9th of January, that there was a good chance that he wasn't going to make it all the way until the 18th or the 19th of April. But my tune really changed on that after Saturday night's main event. And not just interfering in the Jacob Cody match, but the promo that he cut after the Jacob Cody match where he said, "This is my show." and anybody that has anything to say about me is going to catch a whooping. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But he took on full ownership, and I believed in the ownership that he took on. And I believed in the idea that he, as a character, was shaping SmackDown around his image. And I loved it. But all that said, as WrestleMania got closer and closer, especially after Randy won that chamber, I was starting to think, like, what could be a bigger match than Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton? I think that in the moment, there are many that, as there always are nowadays in Cody big matches, that are upset that Cody won another big match. And that's fine. That's the nature of being a top guy for a long time. That's the nature of being a top guy for 4 years running. You can't do that without a group of fans that is getting larger and larger and larger poo-pooing it. And I understand. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I don't like arguments that aren't based in logic, reason, or truth. When you're going, hey, like for instance, there's a narrative out there that Cody did to Drew McIntyre what The Rock tried to do to Cody. So we see this match happen. Cody wins the title. Cody now goes to WrestleMania as champion. Cody now gets the main event of WrestleMania. And the YouTube video gets a whole bunch of dislikes on it. Whatever they said, 150,000 dislikes. And the internet goes, well, we wanted Drew. And they said, well, okay. Since the YouTube video has all those dislikes, and since some of us on the internet are saying we wanted Drew, this is exactly what happened with the final boss. And I tell you, no. Anybody that was there 2 years ago, anybody that was there when the final boss stuff started happening, you could not go out in any place near the wrestling world without somebody talking about what had happened. Because the difference was that when Rock came in and Cody stepped aside after winning the Royal Rumble, we were locked into not a wrestler. We were locked into a story. The story that we wanted was Cody Rhodes finishing the story. Cody had lost at WrestleMania 39. Cody had built his way back and built his way back. He had had this year. We had this rivalry with Brock Lesnar. And he had been in the tag team with Jey Uso. And we had all watched it happen. And then he won the Royal Rumble. People didn't buy when he stepped aside. And as much as the Roman Rock match is still the ultimate match, in that moment, the story was Cody and Roman. I would argue that as much as people who aren't happy that Cody won want Drew to be champion going into WrestleMania, for Drew, for the sake of Drew, and for Drew's kind of overall picture, the reality is the story that we're watching unfold. There's not a story that's being disrupted by Cody winning the title. I think that this way, all stories are going to be told in a much more full way. So, first thing is that Sami Zayn points out to Cody that things always go his way. Sami Zayn goes to Cody and says the Golden Boy gets what he wants again. And there are a lot of fans that are going, Sami just said the quiet part loud. Cody lost the Rumble. He lost the Chamber. Why does he still get this match? Cody lost those matches. Why does he still get to go to SmackDown, still win the championship? Why does he still get to go to the main event of WrestleMania? Except all of those questions have been answered by the story that preceded the match on SmackDown. So on January 9th, Drew McIntyre wins the 3 Stages of Hell match after Jacob returned. Drew McIntyre is about to escape the cage. Jacob comes out and stops him after being gone for a couple of months. Jacob then enters the cage, starts beating down Drew McIntyre. Cody, instead of retreating, pulls Jacob Fatu off of Drew McIntyre. Jacob and Cody start going off after each other. And Drew McIntyre escapes the cage with the WWE Championship. On the 16th of January, a week later, Cody and Jacob are at each other's throats because Cody doesn't like that Jacob's been involved, and Jacob feels, because, well, I mean, that's what it is, right? Cody feels that Jacob got involved in his business by interfering in the match. Jacob feels that Cody got involved in his business by stopping him from giving Drew McIntyre the beatdown that Jacob feels Drew McIntyre deserves. A week later, they had that amazing face-to-face before the Saturday Night's main event match, Jacob and Cody. They go to Saturday Night's main event, and Drew McIntyre interferes. A match that barely got in the ring. They ended up going into the crowd. They're up in the concession stands. It was amazing. But Drew comes out, and he lays both of them out. And that's kind of how we end January. We get into the Royal Rumble. And on the way to the Royal Rumble, Jacob is now going after Drew McIntyre on SmackDown, because that's where the problem lies between Jacob and Drew McIntyre. Drew has a problem with Cody, not because of a rivalry, but because he is trying to dictate exactly who he is defending the championship against. He had a no rematch clause in his contract. And so Cody doesn't get, now that doesn't mean Cody never gets a shot again. That means he doesn't get an automatic rematch. That means he doesn't get a championship match just because he's the former champion. He would have to earn a championship match. So Cody has entered the Royal Rumble to try to earn that championship match. So it is not a rematch. It is the championship match awarded to the Royal Rumble winner, except Drew McIntyre, who is not in the Royal Rumble, comes out and he eliminates Cody Rhodes. Now, there is precedent set that when somebody does something like that, the person who gets screwed out of the Rumble ends up fighting the person that screwed them. In 1992, Hulk Hogan was eliminated from the Royal Rumble, and he pulled out Psycho Sid. I'm sorry, Sid Justice at the time. He pulls out Sid Justice. Flair dumps Sid as Hogan is pulling him out, but Sid wouldn't have been eliminated had it not been for Hogan, who was already eliminated. So what do? We go to WrestleMania with Hogan and Sid because we have to pay this off. In 1993, The Undertaker got eliminated from the Royal Rumble by a debuting superstar named the Giant Gonzalez. Undertaker was screwed out of the Royal Rumble. So what does he do? He gets a match with the individual that screwed him, the Giant Gonzalez, much to the chagrin of The Undertaker. He faced Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania 9. And you go, okay, big deal. Those weren't the champions. Okay, so what happens if the WWE champion, who the winner of the Royal Rumble is supposed to face, is the reason that you get screwed out of winning the Royal Rumble? Well, in that case, we go to Royal Rumble in 1999, before WrestleMania 15. And after winning the WWE Championship from Mankind in an I Quit match, the Royal Rumble is down to Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Rock comes out, the WWE champion, and distracts Stone Cold Steve Austin. He causes a distraction that allows Mr. McMahon to eliminate Steve Austin. Mr. McMahon wins the 1999 Royal Rumble. Do we go to WrestleMania 15 then with The Rock versus Mr. McMahon? No. Stone Cold Steve Austin got screwed out of winning the Royal Rumble, and therefore we went to WrestleMania 15 with Stone Cold Steve Austin facing The Rock. In this instance, we have an elimination chamber that is supposed to establish who gets the shot at WrestleMania. Since that elimination chamber is going to be respected, instead of having the WrestleMania match for which a precedent has been set for Cody Rhodes getting screwed, we have it before WrestleMania, and therefore the elimination chamber stipulation can still be enforced. And so with just the Royal Rumble, there is precedent that Cody Rhodes would get that title match against Drew McIntyre. But it goes further, my friend. It goes further, because after the Royal Rumble on February 13th, Drew McIntyre got involved in the qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber between Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes, and Jacob Fatu. He stopped Jacob Fatu from qualifying. Drew did. And he would have stopped Cody Rhodes from qualifying, except Sami Zayn made the same mistake that Cody made, going after Drew McIntyre, even though Drew had no business with Sami and was trying to make it so that Sami won. And when Sami went after Drew, that's when Cody hit that crossroads. 1, 2, 3. Now Cody qualifies for the chamber. Now that would give Sami Zayn reason to want a match with Drew McIntyre, but also Jacob Fatu still hasn't gotten a match with Drew McIntyre. We go past February now, and we go to February 20th, where Jacob Fatu has now stood in a ring with Cody Rhodes, and on the 20th of February, just a few weeks ago, makes it clear that he has no problem with Cody Rhodes. He says it into a microphone. He says it to Cody's face. I am in this ring, sharing this space with you because I want Drew McIntyre. He screwed me out of my qualifying match. I want Drew McIntyre. And Cody Rhodes said, I accept that you have a beef with Drew McIntyre. I also have a beef with Drew McIntyre, and therefore, and I am entitled to have this beef with Drew McIntyre, and therefore I also want to go after Drew McIntyre. And Drew stays away from him. But Jacob Fatu, from that point on, is campaigning to Nick Aldis. Let me fight Drew McIntyre. Let me fight Drew McIntyre. Let me fight Drew McIntyre. A week later, on February the 27th, Jacob has a second qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber against Logan Paul to fill the freshly injured Jey Uso's Elimination Chamber pod. Logan Paul is able to win after Drew McIntyre interferes and costs Jacob Fatu this match. Drew McIntyre is a menace. He won't allow Jacob Fatu. He won't allow Cody Rhodes to qualify to ever face him. We get to the Elimination Chamber, and Drew cost Cody Rhodes the Elimination Chamber match. He didn't pin Cody Rhodes. He didn't knock him out. But he was the distraction that allowed Randy Orton to RKO Cody Rhodes, pin him, and cost him the Elimination Chamber. So why would Cody get a match with Drew? Well, because we go back to precedent set. Even if he hadn't had the Royal Rumble, if he had just had Elimination Chamber, in 2010, Shawn Michaels appeared from under the ring inside the Elimination Chamber. He tunneled from the locker room all the way down to under the Elimination Chamber, moved the steel grating. He didn't even do the, let's just leave. He wasn't dealing. In 2010, we had referees who understood you can't just leave the Elimination Chamber door open all day long. Shawn said, no problem. I'll do it the hard way. And he moved the steel grating. He interfered in the match. He cost The Undertaker the Elimination Chamber. Chris Jericho pins The Undertaker, gets the shot. And since Shawn Michaels cost The Undertaker inside the Elimination Chamber, who does The Undertaker now get to fight? Shawn Michaels. Drew McIntyre cost Cody Rhodes in the Elimination Chamber. Cody Rhodes should get to fight Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre cost Cody Rhodes in the Royal Rumble. Cody Rhodes should get to fight Drew McIntyre. Not only is there evidence for it, there's precedents set. Left with no choice, Nick Aldis, who is dealing with a champion who will not listen to him, Nick Aldis has said over and over and over again to Drew McIntyre, you can't do this, Drew. Stop doing this. I'm giving you the night off. Don't be here tonight. Drew says, no problem. He's there anyway. Nick Aldis says, don't interfere in this match, Drew. Drew says, no problem. He interferes anyway. Left in a position where, based on precedent set, Cody Rhodes is entitled to a match, and with a champion who will not listen to any instruction whatsoever over and over and over again, Nick Aldis decides to make the match with Cody Rhodes. There is work being done over the last 2 months that makes this match completely legitimate. And that's why Sami Zayn's justification for the fact that Cody didn't deserve this match will make Sami Zayn a heel. Because the bare bones basics around it, yes, you could make the argument that Cody didn't deserve the match because he lost the qualifiers. Sure. But if you're actually looking into precedent, facts, and numbers, you've got every reason in the world for Cody Rhodes to have this championship match on SmackDown, because you can't do it at WrestleMania because Randy Orton would then not get the match that he was entitled to. This is the only way to make sure that people get the opportunities that they are entitled to based on precedents. Now we get back to numbers. People are bringing up these ridiculous YouTube statistics, right? They're saying, well, Cody Rhodes winning the championship is the video on YouTube with the most dislikes that WWE has had all year. That's what it says on the internet. They say it's over 100,000 dislikes or whatever it is, and it's the most of any video all year long. And you go, okay, well, first of all, we're 2 months and a week. We're 9 weeks into the year. I'm sure there'll be plenty of time to have another video that gets disliked. But it's early in the year for that statistic. Second of all, let's look at the other numbers involved, okay? Because what we would be doing is we would be comparing it to the Drew McIntyre title win, right? What was the most recent title win to compare it to? And I think the Drew McIntyre title win would be the most recent to compare it to. Now, the Drew McIntyre title win has very few dislikes in comparison to the Cody Rhodes title win, which has a tremendous amount of dislikes. However, these dislikes are suspicious, being that the Drew McIntyre win happened 2 months ago, has 1.5 million views and 34,000 likes. In 3 days, as of the time of this recording, the Cody Rhodes win has 1.27 million views. So call it 200,000 away from 1.5, but it has plenty of time to get those 200K because Drew's was over the course of 2 months. And it's got 33,000 likes as compared to Drew McIntyre's 34,000 likes. With an extra 200,000 views, Drew McIntyre's title win has an extra 1,000 likes. So I'm looking at this and going, in terms of likes and in terms of views, Cody winning the championship has almost equivalent feedback to Drew winning the championship. It's the same thing. It's the same number of views. It's the same number of likes. And then I go, okay, well, are there just like a ton of people that were indifferent? Are there 100,000 viewers that were indifferent watching Drew McIntyre win and have become angry watching Cody Rhodes win? Are there 100,000 viewers that sat there and said, oh, I don't like or dislike it. I'll just enjoy watching Drew winning the title, but watch Cody win and say, oh, I usually don't click, but right now I'm going to click a thumbs down? Or did it get botted to death? You tell me, based on the numbers I've given you. You tell me, are there 100,000 people that decided, normally I don't interact with these videos at all, but today I'm going to hit a thumbs down? Or did it get botted? Meaning, did a few people just pay bots to dislike? I don't know. I don't know how these things work. I'm just saying, looking at the statistics, it's more equivalent than one would think. So I look at this and I go, the reality is that once we get to WrestleMania, you've got two very compelling stories. Because as I said at the beginning of this, Randy's getting cheered. People are excited at the idea of Randy being back in the title picture, at the idea of Randy becoming a 15-time champion, at this version of Randy Orton main eventing WrestleMania for only what was it, the third time he said? And there are some that would tell you, well, I don't understand. Cody has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be his fifth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be his fifth WrestleMania main event. They'll go, I don't understand. John Cena didn't have as many. Randy Orton didn't have as many. Sure. But this is the modern era. This is a different thing. Who's the last top guy? Who's still kind of a top guy? Probably Roman Reigns. You know how many main events Roman Reigns has at WrestleMania? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This will be Roman's 11th. Assuming Roman and Punk is a WrestleMania main event, this will be Roman's 11th main event. 31, 32, 33, 34, 37, 38, 39, 40, 40, 41, and now potentially 42. So it's not unprecedented what's happening with Cody right now either. WrestleMania has changed. In the modern era, WrestleMania has evolved in the way it's presented, has been changed and evolved. And timing is everything, right? Timing changes everything. I also think that in this whole setup here, I was telling you that Jacob Fatu has been in similar positions to Cody in the sense that Jacob Fatu has been screwed by Drew McIntyre. That for Jacob Fatu, I don't even think it's really about the championship. It's just about getting his hands on Drew McIntyre. Whereas for Cody Rhodes, it was really more about the championship. So now you've got a scenario where Cody Rhodes goes into WrestleMania and has his mentor one-on-one in the main event. The same guy who we watched for a year. Every time he was standing next to Cody Rhodes staring at that title. When's it going to happen? Something's got to give. When's it going to happen? Something's got to give. Well, we waited and we waited and we waited. And boom, we got it. This thing that now has years of foundation. Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes, the Viper versus the American Nightmare, is here. And we've got, what is it, 5-6 weeks for WWE to kind of set up what exactly the story is right now. What is the story on that day going in? Who are Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton on that day? At the same time, it's not about the title. It's not about multiple people. Jacob Fatu is in a prime position to face Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre now, because Jacob Fatu cost Drew McIntyre the title. Based on everything I set up for you, Drew McIntyre has every reason in the world to want to fight Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu has every reason in the world to want to fight Drew McIntyre. Could Sami Zayn get involved in that? Could he get involved in the world title, in the WWE title match? Sure. But right now, today, I think that for me is why I was hoping Cody Rhodes was going to win the WWE Championship. Because I think Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton and Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre have the potential to just be two insane, awesome matches. I think Cody versus Randy is that sort of classic WrestleMania, two forces, something's got to give. It feels like something is going to happen here type of match. And Cody could just go in. Cody could get cheered. It could be two guys both getting cheered going in. Randy could potentially turn heel. He said he doesn't have any qualms about being selfish. Clearly, he's still the Viper, but I don't think anybody's going to boo him even if he does turn. I don't know what Randy could do to get people to boo him. Is Cody going to lean into those boos a little bit more than we expect? I don't know. Something's got to give. And at the same time, you've got Jacob Fatu, who a lot of us are just waiting to hit that main event scene. And Drew McIntyre, who was in the main event up until Friday. And now isn't. And there are a lot of people who think he should. So it's on Drew McIntyre to go to WrestleMania and prove why those people are right. I think you're going to get a Jacob Fatu and a Drew McIntyre that are not only telling this story that they've done the work to get us invested in, but that in a very real life way are telling the story in a way and fighting the match in a way where they want to make sure that on the 18th, the 19th, by April 20th, people are leaving Las Vegas, Nevada, going, Drew and Jacob was the main event. Drew and Jacob was my favorite match. Drew and Jacob should have gone on last. And you've got 3-hour episodes of SmackDown from now up until April 17th that are focusing on those two matches, plus Rhea and Jade, plus everything else that's going to go on for WrestleMania. And I think we're cooking here. I think that we're rolling. Now, guys, we'll be back to it in just a second, but I've got to tell you, I love NordVPN. NordVPN is secure, NordVPN is fast, and NordVPN is easy. It'll give you entertainment, it'll give you privacy, it'll give you security, all in one simple service. First of all, you can choose from VPN servers across 168 locations. There's always one nearby. All you have to do is hit the quick connect button, and their smart algorithm is going to find the best one for you. NordVPN offers special security features like Threat Protection Pro, an anti-malware tool that's going to help you avoid malicious downloads, phishing, scams, and ads. It's got amazing speed. I use it. I have never noticed a single difference in my internet speed. NordVPN is one of the fastest VPNs out there. And best of all, one NordVPN account can be used on 10 different devices. They support every platform: Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, Linux, even Android TV. I have it on my Apple TV. I have it on my iPad. I have it on my computer. It's great. That's why I've got an exclusive NordVPN deal for you. Just go to nordvpn.com/notsam and try it risk-free now with a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/notsam. Before we get to everything else that could be happening at WrestleMania, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Penta at WrestleMania, because Penta is the WWE Intercontinental Champion on Monday Night Raw. It was Dominic Mysterio versus Penta. And at first, the Judgment Day didn't want to be in Dominic's corner. He asked him if they're going to be at ringside. At first, it seemed like Finn Balor was saying no. But it was interesting that Finn Balor was saying no in a way where it's like, no, Dom, but you have to do this yourself. It was almost... See, when Finn Balor used to say that, it was like he was making an excuse. He was telling Dominic, no, I'm not going to be there, but it's for your own good. But in reality, it was because Finn Balor had some kind of animosity. It was because Finn Balor wanted to see Dominic lose. Now it seems like Finn Balor is portraying more of somebody that is changed after his rivalry with CM Punk. Somebody that chose to not use the Judgment Day's help in that CM Punk rivalry. And even though he didn't win, is at peace with it and wants to take that experience and bring it back to the Judgment Day. Unfortunately for him, this is not the way the Judgment Day has been doing business for the last, years at this point. So Finn Balor agrees, okay, no, of course, we'll be at ringside to celebrate you. And Finn and JD, not only do they not get involved in the match, but they are so just there to support Dominic that they sit down. I think these are all very important details that are happening. Finn Balor and JD McDonough sit in chairs at ringside. They're not leaned up on the apron because they are absolutely not going to get involved. They're just going to support their family member, their Judgment Day family member, and be there for him to celebrate with him should he defeat Penta. And when Dominic goes and the referee's down and Penta's down, he goes, "Give me I got to get the hammer, the hammer from Shockmaster's kid. I got to get the hammer from the timekeeper." And JD's ready to get it for him. And we've seen Dominic use this hammer many, many times. And Finn Balor says, "No, you can't. You can't." And when Finn Balor is doing this again, I felt like this time it was different than the other times that he's done it. I felt like this time it was more of Finn Balor saying, we can't do this because Dominic isn't going to find the peace that I've found. Dominic isn't going to be the best version of himself that I feel as though I have become because of the way I'm conducting myself. No, we can't do it that way. And while all this confusion is happening, of course, the Judgment Day take their lumps. Finn Balor and JD McDonough, as they're arguing, get hit by Penta. Penta's able to beat Dominic. 1, 2, 3. Penta is the Intercontinental Champion. I think it helps a lot of ways. Number one, the fact that Finn Balor took that lump, it's almost like not only could he have helped Dominic win the match, but he could have avoided getting hit by Penta if he just let JD go get the hammer. Except Finn Balor was trying to do things the right way. A lot of things happening with Finn Balor right now are a kind of, I don't want to say nice guys finish last, but that's what it is. And it's not to say Finn Balor is finishing last. It's to say Finn Balor is starting to become a nice guy. I think there are little driplets of Finn Balor being a good human being, which wasn't the case when he was a straight up heel in the Judgment Day. I think and I think the fact that Finn Balor got hit for it only makes him a better person for doing it. I think that the fact that they didn't just have Penta get back in the ring and pin Dominic, it took him whatever it was, a minute of offense. Like Dom almost had him in the 619 and Penta. That way Penta's win is legit. Penta's win is not associated with, yeah, but if all this nonsense hadn't been happening, Penta wouldn't have beat Dominic. No. Moving forward, you don't bounce off of that match and go, well, this thing between Dominic and Penta isn't over. Like, it's almost like Dominic and the Judgment Day have this thing to work out, and Penta over here is now the Intercontinental Champion, which is the best way to put that title on somebody new. I don't know where Penta fits into WrestleMania. It feels, I think, as I'm making a WrestleMania card, there's a multi-man match I could put him in, but that also feels like I saw it last year. The Intercontinental title, it's been a multi-man match at many WrestleManias. So maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe there's a rivalry to get Penta involved in. I don't know, because as I'm making my WrestleMania card, and I'll get that to in a minute, there are certain matches that I want to see, but it leaves me without dance partners for other people that should be on the show. So Penta wins the Intercontinental Championship. The Judgment Day at odds, but it seems like Finn Balor is kind of doing more and more babyface stuff. Before the match, they had their confrontation with Danhausen. Now, this Danhausen thing, well, I'll get to the Danhausen thing in a minute, but before we completely wrap up on Finn Balor, I think the Danhausen confrontation was another example of what I'm talking about with Finn Balor, where I think that they are slowly pushing him over to the babyface side of things so that when he turns, fans will be with him because he's been doing the right thing. Danhausen shows up, oh, hello, after he asks Adam Pearce for a blimp, for a Hall of Fame induction, for a camera boy, and for a pointing photo with Triple H. JD McDonough says, I already hate this guy. Dominic Mysterio threatens to beat him up, says, you better go before something bad happens to you. Of course, that's after Danhausen, like he's in fourth grade, goes, oh, that's nice. Can I have that? Pointing at the Intercontinental Championship. But Finn Balor says, oh, come on, he's new, guys. Give him a chance. That's that guy. It's like you're hanging out with the cool kids, and the cool kids are bullying the new kid, but there's one kid hanging out with the cool kids, the older kid that goes, oh, leave him alone. He seems good enough. And that kid is a babyface. Even if he's hanging out with a heel group, he's a babyface in any movie. And that's where Finn Balor is at right now. But I've got to say, and I don't normally say I told you so, but guys, we talked about this last week. And it's amazing. It's all quiet on the Western Front. A week ago at this time, I couldn't get over how many YouTube videos were popping up that talked about how Danhausen's debut had been fumbled. How I don't know what they were thinking bringing Danhausen out. How I don't know what the WWE doesn't know what to do with Danhausen. How WWE already regrets bringing in Danhausen. It was just catastrophe. There's so much catastrophizing that happens, I don't want to say amongst wrestling fans, but it's amongst wrestling content creators. And when I say content creators, I mean podcasters, I mean YouTubers, I mean prolific wrestling Twitter accounts. If you tweet about wrestling a lot, you're a wrestling content creator. If you put out TikTok clips, if you do this podcast, I am in that group. You're a wrestling content creator. And there is a level of catastrophizing that happens every single week amongst wrestling content creators that is absurd. It's why I had to do my whole soliloquy earlier in the show about Cody Rhodes. Why I had to do all this research, because the amount of catastrophizing that people were doing coming out of SmackDown. It's the same thing and that's what they do. They catastrophize the Danhausen debut, and then when that's okay, they find something else to catastrophize about so that nobody has to justify what they had said a week ago about Danhausen when Danhausen is clearly working as we said it would. Wrestling fans or wrestling content creators, catastrophizing content creators. The triple C's, catastrophizing content creators, would tell you that they hyped the box up too much, when in reality, we hyped the box up too much. And we were all doing it, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But the box was always meant to be absurd. Who in 2026 debuts out of a box? A fool. That's who. Somebody who would think this is going to be the biggest thing ever, not realizing that is not a big thing. It's silly to debut out of a box. That's the whole point, though. And I said a week ago, the booing is going to fit the Danhausen character. That Danhausen thinks he should get a championship. Nobody else thinks he should get a championship. Danhausen thinks he should be in the Hall of Fame. Nobody thinks Danhausen should be in the Hall of Fame. Danhausen thinks he should be treated as the biggest signing WWE has ever had. Nobody thinks that, just Danhausen. We don't take Danhausen seriously. We take him as comedy. Danhausen takes himself very seriously. That's where the comedy lies. Therefore, Danhausen getting booed, the only person that wouldn't occur to is Danhausen. And it took him one sentence to squash the whole thing. One sentence. On Monday night, when he looked at Adam Pearce and said, I was met with uproarious applause and cheering. That was it. Danhausen heard himself getting cheered. Danhausen saw an incredible pyrotechnics display when we saw these little wimpy explosions. That's Danhausen. It's very nice. It's very evil. The teeth, the whole thing. It makes sense to Danhausen. It makes sense to nobody else. Therefore, the booing becomes a greater part of this act. And so when he's told Dominic Mysterio, I curse you, I thought they did such a good job on commentary of when Dominic Mysterio lost the title. They didn't say he got cursed. Nobody was sitting there saying he lost the title because he got cursed. Because only Danhausen takes that seriously. He lost the title because of the friction with the Judgment Day. But if you ask Danhausen, he lost it because he was cursed. And it's those little things that would make you go, but what if the Judgment Day distraction happened because he was cursed? What if Danhausen, who sees things differently from the rest of us, is actually the one who sees them for what they are, who sees them truly? Now, Adam Pearce wanted Danhausen out of his hair. So he introduced him to the Judgment Day and walked away. Nick Aldis sees Danhausen on SmackDown, and Danhausen is now asking for a blimp, and he's asking for a championship, a title. And Nick Aldis wants nothing to do with Danhausen, so he wants to get Danhausen out of his hair, wants to get the Miz out of his hair. He goes, Miz, you think you're the locker room leader? I have somebody new for you to mentor. And it's Danhausen. And Miz says, this is ridiculous. Nick Aldis walks away. And Danhausen just hits him with the, you'll help me get a title. And Miz says, no, I won't. And he goes, you'll have to. Because if you won't, you will be cursed. And then he leans in and he says, and remember what happened to Dom. And he walks away and Miz goes, oh my God, he's right. Miz, who has been portraying himself as this locker room leader, is going to have to try to be that locker room leader for somebody like Danhausen. And I mean, I like, if it's me, I'm going crazy with this. I'm going full. Remember when Shane McMahon was training Vince McMahon for the Royal Rumble and Vince is like chasing chickens around and stuff like that? I think like we should be filming vignettes of Miz teaching Danhausen all the old like locker room wrestling tropes. You know, I think Miz should be talking to Danhausen about watching out, don't get kicked out of the locker room. You don't want to say the wrong thing. I think Miz should be teaching Danhausen to shake everybody's hand when he walks into the building. I think Miz should be teaching Danhausen to say yes, sir, and no, sir, to have locker room respect, to revere locker room leaders like himself. I think we should see this whole journey play out. And Miz trying to be this mentor when in reality, Danhausen is the one in complete control of everything. And I think like Miz guiding Danhausen to, I mean, you may even have to create a title. Because I don't know, you don't want it to be the United States or the Intercontinental title. Maybe he finds the 24/7 title in the garbage. Maybe he creates a Danhausen title. Whatever it is, find a way to get there. But incorporate all the wrestling humor and tropes. Maybe you realize that the boys don't respect Miz as much as they should. And so like Danhausen is getting taught these lessons. They're all kind of rolling their eyes at the Miz. And instead of Danhausen also rolling his eyes at the Miz and kind of maybe Danhausen protects the Miz. Maybe Danhausen likes the Miz. Maybe the roles get flipped. Maybe Danhausen starts cursing people. Maybe Danhausen leads the Miz into being a champion. But I mean, I would take this little kernel and go absolutely all the way with it as far as you could possibly go. I just don't, I see no negative that would come of it. You know, and just watch this thing. I think Miz and Danhausen have the opportunity to just be a great sort of strange bedfellows team, where it starts with the Miz kind of guiding Danhausen through, like, and tell him about Wrestler's Court. Tell him about all these sort of locker room things from back in the day that don't even exist anymore. And have the payoff be when Miz is getting disrespected by his colleagues in the locker room, Danhausen is there having the Miz's back. That maybe Danhausen curses somebody who disrespects Miz. And maybe it doesn't lead Danhausen to a championship. Maybe it leads the Miz to a championship. And the only thing is that Danhausen is going to be at his side the whole time. You don't think, I mean, Danhausen's jacket kind of looks like an old school with the diagonal closure on it. Kind of looks like the Miz's old school jacket. Wouldn't you like to see Danhausen? Now, I'm not saying Mizhausen. Maybe the team is called Mizhausen. I don't think Miz paints his face. But I do think maybe Danhausen puts on a Miz headband and does the spin with the Miz. I wouldn't mind seeing that. There's just so much you could do. I mean, people, you don't get Danhausen, I don't know what to tell you, but there is so much. This character is rich and ripe with possibilities. We're going to get back to it in a second, but look, you chose to hit play on this podcast today, right? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called AutoQuote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. So I told you we're looking at WrestleMania. And as I'm looking at WrestleMania, I've got to tell you, so we know for sure we've got Roman Reigns and CM Punk. And I told you that we put out videos. I put out a whole video giving my feelings on the Roman Reigns CM Punk confrontation. Why CM Punk did go too far, but that was by design. And it sets up who Roman Reigns and CM Punk are. If you didn't hear my full breakdown on Roman Reigns and CM Punk, go back and listen to it. I put it up last week, and I was very, very happy with it. So you got Roman and Punk, you got Cody and Randy, you got Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer, which we kind of know the backstory of that. And then as of Friday, we've got Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley. Now, Jade and Rhea had a different interaction. They were going back and forth on Twitter. I mean, talk about going too far. Felt like Jade Cargill had maybe gone past the line of unreal for a second. I'm talking about having conversations with creative and stuff. I don't see how that's going to, well, whatever. But we end up with the two of them in the ring, and it feels like the story of this is Jade's built for show, Rhea's built for go. Jade is built to look like a human action figure, what a superstar and an attraction should look like. But Rhea Ripley is a fighter. Rhea Ripley is the one that is unstoppable. I think this Jade Cargill Rhea Ripley match, by the time we get to Mania, is just going to be massive. I think that they are both right when they say that, like, these two women are what an attraction match looks like. I am thrilled that this is the WWE Women's Championship match for Mania. And I also think that these two are going to bust ass to make sure this is one to write home about. As a matter of fact, I think if I'm Rhea Ripley and I'm Jade Cargill, I'm looking at Roman and Punk, and I'm looking at Cody and Randy, and I'm offended. I'm offended if I'm Rhea Ripley or Jade Cargill that I'm not right now called the main event, and I'm going to make sure the same way Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu would, I'm going to make sure that my match steals the show. I think there's a lot of spots on this WrestleMania that you've got people that I hope are out there, as you do on most WrestleManias, by the way, and you should, that want to go, okay. Undertaker was telling a story. He had Michael Hayes on his podcast recently. It was really, really great. But he was talking about how when he and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 found out they were going smack dab in the middle of the show, they said, okay, that's what you think? All right, we'll be in the middle then. And they said that's the moment that they were like, we're going to steal this show. And I think that should be the mentality of Drew and Jacob. And I think that should be the mentality of Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill. So I'm looking at other matches. And like I said, I think you got 4. I think Drew versus Jacob is an easy 5, right? I think we were just talking about it. I think now's the time to do Dominic Mysterio versus Finn Balor. I think it's the full babyface Finn Balor, and I think he's the demon. I think the Judgment Day beats out Finn Balor, and I think that Finn comes back as the demon to get his revenge on Dominic Mysterio. So that's 6 matches so far, right? I think you're going to do AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch in a rematch, unless AJ loses the title beforehand. I think if AJ's going to wrestle, I think AJ versus Becky is the match, maybe with a stipulation. I would like to see, based on where we're at with the women's tag division, I'd like to see the women have a multi-team TLC match at WrestleMania. Maybe a 4, maybe a 5-way, like a TLC women's match. There has not been a TLC. I mean, TLC tag matches are, of course, especially at WrestleMania, synonymous with 17, because 16 was just the ladder match. 17 was the TLC match, which they also did at SummerSlam, of course, between the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian. I think if you honored that tradition by having 3 or 4 women's tag teams show up for a TLC match, I'm thinking Nia and Jade, I'm thinking Charlotte, Alexa, I'm thinking maybe the Bellas, I'm thinking maybe Kabukis, I'm thinking maybe Kiana James and Julia. Maybe that's 5 teams that you throw in there. But they've spent a long time building up this women's tag division. And I think that would be a great way to settle it. But I think you need to have the Vision involved. And, of course, you need to have Seth Rollins involved, right? I think that as much as people, and I'm going to have a video about this coming out as well. It may have already come out by the time you see this. I think that as much as people go, hey, I'm looking at Seth Rollins and Logan Paul, Paul Heyman got taken out on Raw by Seth Rollins. I don't think Paul Heyman's going to be back on Raw this week, but I think he will be there on the 16th with Brock Lesnar. If I'm Seth Rollins, I'm not starting slow. I'm going after the head of that snake. How can you have Seth Rollins going after Logan Paul of the Vision if Paul Heyman is also doing the Brock Lesnar match? I think Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar is the wrestle. I think that's what I would do. I think I would do Seth versus Brock. And I think I would explain it this way. Paul, you said the Brock Lesnar match is the new Undertaker match, right? There's one guy that Brock Lesnar can't beat, and there's one guy he can't beat at WrestleMania. Because the year after the Undertaker match, Brock didn't win the Brock Lesnar match. Why? Because I made it a triple threat match. And then a couple years after that at WrestleMania 35, Brock Lesnar didn't win the Brock Lesnar match. Why? Because he was facing Seth Rollins. The same way Roman Reigns can't pin Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar cannot beat Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. So that's what Seth Rollins is there to do. My first step is to ruin the Brock Lesnar match. And I'm going to do it by beating him at WrestleMania again. Which leaves you with Austin, which is maybe not where I would have gone if Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed weren't injured, but it is what it is. Now, where do you go with the Vision? I think you have Logan Paul and Austin Theory because of just the way things have all kind of panned out. I think the Usos are defending their tag team championship against Logan Paul and Austin Theory. I think Logan Paul and Austin Theory leave WrestleMania with the tag team championship. This is what I think right now. This could all change by the time we get to WrestleMania. I think, but here's the thing. I think it makes sense to have the Usos versus the Vision. I think maybe the Vision could take credit for taking out Jey Uso at SmackDown, unless it's the same person who took out Jacob Fatu a few months ago. But this is where I start to get lost, right? Because once I put the Usos and the Vision together, I'm now going, okay, you've got Sami Zayn, you've got LA Knight, you've got Penta as the new IC champion, you got Oba Femi, you got Tiffany Stratton, and what's the Gunther? And then, by the way, okay, and then are we doing Americano versus Americano? Is that a WrestleMania match? Are we going mask versus mask? Americano versus Americano? It certainly seems that way. If so, now you've got 11, right? So let's say we're doing 7 a night. That leaves us 11, 12, 13. That leaves us with 3 more matches. And I don't have a Gunther match. I don't have an Oba match. I don't have a Tiffany Stratton match. I don't have Sami Zayn. I don't have LA Knight. I don't have Penta. Maybe that's where you start. I don't have Ilya. You would think Ilya Dragunov and is going to come to I have finally found myself. I'm ready to try to get the U.S. title back. You would think that feels like something you could pay off at WrestleMania. And it certainly is a big spot for Carmella. By the way, I don't have a Trick Williams match. Trick Williams should already be a main event of WrestleMania. Trick Williams is there already. I think of everybody that's debuted in the last 2 years, Trick is the guy. More so than anybody else, and that includes everybody. Excluding nobody. Trick Williams as the guy. Maybe you could do Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn. Are you going to turn Trick babyface? I think he's going to get a babyface introduction at WrestleMania. Maybe Sami Zayn tries to get selfish. Maybe Trick Williams has a problem with it. I mean, you could do, what about Javon Evans? You don't have a Javon match. Are you going to do, if you're going to do a multi-man match for the IC title, is it going to be Penta, JD, Javon Evans, LA Knight? And then would a U.S. title match be Sammy, Mello, Ilya, and Trick? Or would you rather see just straight up Sammy versus Trick? Does that mean that Carmelo Hayes and Ilya Dragunov end up on the Friday before WrestleMania instead of WrestleMania proper with the Andre Battle Royal and stuff like that? Does that mean Penta Penta ends up with a big match on the Raw after WrestleMania instead of, or should he? I think he should be defending at WrestleMania. I guess it would depend on the story. Are you going to do Gunther versus Rey Mysterio? Gunther choked out Dragon Lee on Monday Night Raw and took his mask off. Are you going with Gunther versus Rey? Because now if you're going with Gunther versus Rey, that's 12. Which means if you're doing 7 a night, you've only got 2 matches left without a lot of people. So I'm interested in your thoughts, and maybe we'll have a bigger conversation about it. Which matches that I just made do you think should change before WrestleMania? Who needs to be on WrestleMania? And do we need more like 8 matches a night? Do we need to go 16 matches for WrestleMania? Because there's a lot that should be on display. I think that part of it is because of how big the roster is right now, but another part of it is because generationally, WWE is at the point where we need new stars. And this should be a platform. Coming off of WrestleMania, this should be a platform for Trick, for Oba, for Jacob, even for Drew. Tiffany Stratton should have a huge spot. LA Knight should have a huge spot. Sami Zayn has a big story right now. He should have a big spot. Like, there's enough there that coming off of WrestleMania, you should have a whole new world. But at the same time, there's all this established talent that needs to have big payoff spots as well. This is a very, very interesting time. I would love to hear what you think. Leave it in the comments on YouTube, the reviews on the podcast, and of course, you can always email in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. That's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Let's get to the emails right now. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. We'll go to Dirk, who says, I'm sure Cody versus Randy and Drew versus 5, 2 has been planned for a while, but I think a fun opportunity was missed, probably because I was actually excited for Randy and Drew program. With Sammy feeling wrong and listening to the voices in his head, him coming out and costing Cody the match would have created an interesting swerve. I wouldn't want to go full conspiracy theory, Sammy, but a whiny, complaining Sammy versus Cody seems more interesting than a babyface versus babyface main event. Thoughts? I don't think that's true. No. I think heel Sammy versus babyface Cody at WrestleMania is not more interesting than Cody versus Randy at WrestleMania, especially since Sammy just turned heel. You've got Cody in a position where he's not in the main event. He's going to beat Sami Zayn. So Sammy turns heel, goes to WrestleMania, gets beat by Cody. Okay. That's more interesting than paying off what we've been building in the short term since Cody won the title at WrestleMania 40, and in the long term since Cody joined Legacy 15 years ago? No, I don't think that that's more interesting than Randy versus Cody. I think it's interesting. I would love to see it, but I don't think Sammy versus Cody. No, I don't think so. Not for WrestleMania. Let's see. Mark writes in. He hits me with one of these. 5, 2. My PTC, you called it right down to the interference. Cody won. Jacob Fatu interfered. You are indeed the wise man. Look, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? Wanted to go over the matches for WrestleMania so far. I have 7 out of... Okay, let's see if we match up. Okay. Punk, Roman, Cody, Randy, yes. Rhea Jade, yes. Liv, Stephanie, yes. AJ, Becky, yes. Drew, Jacob, yes. Nia and Lash versus Alexa and Charlotte. I had that as a TLC. What else do you have on the card? I just let you know, but let me know what you thought of that card and what should be added and taken off. Sam Banks writes in, Danhausen has had 2 television appearances so far and has demanded an induction into the 2026 Hall of Fame class. To both Pierce and Aldis, I think WWE should definitely induct Danhausen into the Hall of Fame this year. Imagine Danhausen's next in-ring television appearance. He's in the ring, getting ready to speak, and before he can say a word, the lights go out and the gong hits. Undertaker comes out and welcomes Danhausen to the 2026 Hall of Fame class. At the actual Hall of Fame ceremony, Adam Pearce or someone can awkwardly induct Danhausen, acting like they have no idea why this is actually happening. Then Danhausen can make his speech, saying things like remembering the time he slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3. I don't think that that's what the Hall of Fame is all about. Here's the thing. If Danhausen gets inducted into the Hall of Fame as a goof, it kind of makes it hard for AJ Styles to come on next and get inducted as if it's real. I think that, if you're going to do something like that, the idea is that Danhausen's demands are ridiculous. Why would Danhausen is he going to get a blimp? Is he going to get a title? Like, he's not getting these things. I think that, like, and it like, for the sake of what? Having this weird Danhausen moment? Like, I think better maybe would be Danhausen thinking that he's getting into the Hall of Fame. Maybe Danhausen walking the red carpet as if he's walking the Hall of Fame. Maybe Danhausen getting locked outside. I would say Danhausen gets locked outside of the Hall of Fame. And you do it the way, like, Bobby Heenan was locked outside of the Manhattan Center for the first episode of Monday Night Raw. And then maybe Miz is there to kind of start giving Danhausen some guidance as to what may have gone wrong and how we can make this better. But no, I don't think you can induct somebody into the Hall of Fame as a goof and induct somebody into the Hall of Fame not as a goof on the same night for the same Hall of Fame. I think that's a tough line to draw. Brian from Dallas writes in, even though Cody got a bit of a late start to winning world titles in WWE, he's now won 3 in the last 2 years. I can see him dropping this one to Randy, though, and possibly winning another in this calendar year. I could see that, too. I could absolutely see Cody losing to Randy Orton at WrestleMania and winning the title back at some point. Do you pick the over or under on 10 world titles for Cody before he retires from wrestling? I believe he's 40 now and also starting to get into acting, which could affect his availability in the years to come. Well, I don't know. I think that's what it depends on, right, Brian? I think that that's possible. But I think Cody has said his next contract could be his last contract. I think a lot of people say that. And then, you kind of got to feel out where you're at in the moment. 10 is a lot starting now. But I think it's possible. I'd love to see Cody. If Cody's around for the next decade, then he could absolutely be at 11, 12, whatever it is. But he'd have to be around for the next decade. I think if he's not around for the next decade, maybe not. Let's go to Doug, who writes in, this is all feelings and could admittedly be off base. I love that. Feelings are good. I would not mind if it, let's see, I'd like to, the March 6th, 26th, okay, whatever. The March 6th promo with Sami Zayn and Randy Orton upon rumination gives me vibes of Paul Heyman's promos with Seth Rollins prior to WrestleMania. Let's say that some careful observers weren't surprised with the outcome of last year's Night 1 main event, the birth of the Vision. Regarding Sami and Randy, my ChatGPT research shows absolutely no evidence whether or not Randy may have been in San Jose on 10/17/26. Clearly, Sami does not have the alibi that, okay. Could Randy have been informally meeting Sami back then and instructed the attack on Jacob Fatu? No, it feels like a reach. I think Sami could have been the one that attacked Jacob Fatu. But I like the whole Randy Orton it feels like you're restructuring the Paul Heyman storyline and just doing the exact same storyline for Sami Zayn, which I don't think you want. You want to keep it in spirit. Mike writes in, I think Raquel's interview on this week's WWE Now was the best interview I've heard on the show. Thank you. She did an amazing job of blurring the line between reality and kayfabe. I actually thought so as well, and was interesting and entertaining the entire time. She was also incredible in the Elimination Chamber, especially inside the pod. She's an undeniable star, and I hope we see her in a more prominent role in the future. How can we get to a Raquel versus Liv feud? Thank you for keeping me updated and entertained. Well, that's what I'd like for Liv to win the title at WrestleMania from Stephanie and go to Raquel next, because I think that you're right on all parts. I actually was talking to the producers of the podcast, of the WWE Now podcast, after the Raquel interview, going like, that's what we want every time. Like that sort of mixture between in character and real life. I feel like that's money. And I think Raquel did it perfectly. I think you hear the reaction that she's getting. I think you see the performance that she's a part of. Raquel is great. So yeah, and that's another thing. I was looking at this WrestleMania card I was writing and going like, where does Raquel fit in? She should have something. Okay, last email. Avik writes in, what's the haps from London? That video of you getting friend zoned by AI had me in bits. Ha 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 ha. Yes, I did. I got friend zoned by ChatGPT. How does Sami Zayn fit into WrestleMania this year? I don't think I can handle 2 years in a row of no Sami at the big show. I think he's got to do something. Maybe Sami gets involved in the title match. What if Sammy screws, you know what you could do? What if Sammy screws Randy out of the title at WrestleMania? What if Sammy gets selfish? I don't know if that's how you want to end the show. If Sammy gets selfish and Cody knowingly accepts the help from Sami Zayn and beats Randy, and now you're drifting towards Cody having a little bit more edge and Randy and Sammy having a rivalry. I don't know if that's how you want to, but I feel like somehow you got to get to Sami Zayn taking Randy's advice against Randy. Because Sammy versus Randy, I feel like is where it goes, but I don't know. All right, guys, I appreciate you hanging out. As always, don't forget to subscribe across all audio platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/Notsam Wrestling. I'm sure we will have a lot to talk about this week, and we will be here to cover it all. Thank you. We'll talk soon.